every day something is happening. Something maybe like a news from the last hour. There is this guy who got arrested in, I think in Greece, and turns out, or there is a very high probability that this guy is the owner of a very famous Bitcoin exchange, BTC, which has been operating since 2011. And I checked the website, and it says currently under maintenance. So this is very like news from the very last hour. So super exciting scene, but without talking too much, because this time I won't be presenting. We have two presenters. And the first one is from AdEx, and this is Vanina from AdEx, and she'll present to you the topic of of how to do an ICO. AdEx did an ICO really recently, a month ago or a bit more, a few weeks ago, and they managed to raise 12 million. So how did they do it, Vanina?
Thank you. Yeah, as Vlad said, the topic of tonight's presentation is an ICO right for you? Before we proceed, a few words about me, a couple of words. Okay. I'm sorry about that, but until I figured it out, my name is Vanina, as you noticed, and I am a marketing expert with 14 years of experience behind my back, and I'm also, I dare say, I am a successful ICOer, because as Vlad said, with the AdEx.netowrk ICO a few weeks ago, we managed to accumulate funding in the amount of $12 million. Which was impressive, and we did that in about 8 hours. So that is about me. Okay, again, sorry about that. Oh, okay, sorry, figured it out. So, is an ICO right for you? In order to answer this question, I have compiled a short list, and again, I'm no expert in ICOs. I mean, we do have one successful token sale behind our backs, but this is relatively new for the whole crypto scene, and for me including. So, I have devised a short list of 5 questions that you need to answer in order to figure out if you should go ahead and do an ICO. The first of those questions is, okay, is your project based on blockchain and crypto technology and on tokens? If the answer to this question is no, I'm going to give you a few seconds to leave the room because you should not do an ICO. This is one of the conditions to go ahead with such a project. The second question that you need to answer is, can your project exist without blockchain and without tokens? If the answer is yes, you may want to consider different alternatives, because the thing is, blockchain is relatively slow as a technology, and depending on your project, there might be better options. And also there might be better funding alternatives, such as an IPO or VCs. Sorry. The next question is, can you establish a value for your token through the usability and functionality of your project? Because this is very important. The value of your token will be directly related to the value of your service. So this is something that you need to have figured out in advance. Moving on. Okay, I don't know what happened, again. As you can see, I'm not very tech savvy, and I'm sorry about that. Just click play. Yeah, thank you. The last question, well, the fourth question, not the last one, but the fourth question is the one that Vlad already mentioned, regulation and legislative framework. He mentioned the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States. Another interesting place in terms of regulation is Gibraltar. Gibraltar, for example, is a tax haven, it's an offshore zone, it's very much preferred for, especially for fintech and gambling companies, and also for ICOs. However, Gibraltar is also considering regulating crypto and decentralized ledgers. Although, in their case, they're looking to attract more ICOs rather than push them away, like in the case of the States. Good jurisdictions we have noticed are Singapore, Switzerland, Estonia, and the EU, because they have very token-friendly legislation. We decided to go ahead with Estonia. We registered our company there, also because they have amazing e-government, so you can do pretty much anything online. And the last question, and this is a very important question, is, are you prepared to live through, Are you prepared to live through the volatility of cryptocurrencies? Are you prepared for a tank by the Bitcoin or Ether? Because let me tell you, I mean, I said we gathered $12 million. We actually got 40,000 Ether. And their value on the day of the ICO was $12 million. A couple of weeks later, it was half of that. So, you know, these price fluctuations you should be aware of, and you should consider when designing your project and when figuring out your funding and your ICO cap. Whew, as you can see, I'm a little bit nervous, sweating a little bit. I just, thank you. Thank you. To be honest, I didn't really expect so many of you to show up. That's the truth. But yeah, moving on, I'm going to guide you through the steps that we, this is again the checklist. If you have all those questions with a green check mark, then you're good to go. You can probably go ahead and prepare your ICO, your token sale. The next part of my presentation is how to prepare a hopefully successful ICO. And a couple of disclaimers here. These steps are, may vary depending on your project and your preparation phase. And also, these steps are based on our own experience with the AdEx.netowrk ICO. So, again, if you see something that you disagree with, don't judge us too harsh. The first step, and in our case, this step took about a year, was researching and preparing our project. Because there's a very high risk that your ICO is perceived as a scam. This is a word that we now hear 5 times a day, every day, at least. There's a great chance that other ICOs are working in the same sphere, so you really need to do your due diligence before you get into an effort that may turn out to be futile. Pay close attention to the competitive landscape, because, as I said, again, in our case, we were pretty sure that we were doing something groundbreaking. No one has ever heard of that. A few weeks before our ICO, 5 other ICOs popped up with, with a similar project. So, this is something that, and there's nothing that can protect you against that, unless, as I said, due diligence. Then you should start writing your white paper. If you imagine an ICO as a house, that is the fundament of your house. This is the document based on which every potential investor would judge your project. This is how they will decide whether they will invest in your project or not. Our personal experience, actually, my teams and I, is that it needs to be technical to demonstrate your expertise, to show that you understand the project that you're getting into. But it also needs to be plain enough for the average investor to understand it. Because a lot of those peoples are a lot like I am with the projector, not very much tech savvy. So it will need to be explained clearly enough for anyone willing to invest to understand. Good practices are to list your team and the expertise of your team, because people will pay a lot of attention to that. And statistics, supporting arguments. This is pretty much a no-brainer. The bounty campaign is very important. I'm mentioning that because the bounty campaign that you're going to design will attract a great deal of people who are probably only there for the tokens that they're going to get. They don't really believe in your project, or they do believe, but they're there for the money, for the tokens. And if you don't have the right technical instruments to execute this bounty campaign, they'll get mad. And they'll write to you 1 million times a day after the ICO. So this is important. The next step is establishing your presence, building a website, social presence, having a Telegram and a Slack channel maybe, making your Bitcoin Talk announcement. That is like the holy grail of ICO, the Bitcoin Talk Forum. And at this point, once you make the official announcement, you'll start attracting people's attention. And people will start being critical, messaging, discussing your project, pointing out flaws that you may or may not have noticed. And this is why the next step is very, very important. Panic a little bit. Just freak out, get it out of your system. You've got a lot more things to do. That leads us to the next step, and that is getting the right advisory board. Why is this so important? Because first of all, the credibility of your project will, to a great extent, depend on the credibility of your advisory board. On one hand, on the other hand, these are the people that will actually help you. So in our case, we had advisors who were very savvy in the field of ICOs, and we also had people that were advising us on the actual project and on the actual tech. Again, I mentioned people will be sending you millions of messages on any channel that they can find you. And at this point of the project, you will not have the capacity to answer all of those questions, but you have to answer them, because if you don't, people will again jump ahead and say that's a scam, and that will, maybe push away potential investors. So get trustworthy, get great community managers that will help you with this. This is, in my opinion, priceless. Again, panic a little bit, because time is passing and the ICO date is coming by, and again, get it out of your system. You still have a lot more to do, and that's the smart contract. Take your time with that. I will not go into details because I didn't write the smart contract. My colleague Ivo did. He's here as well tonight. But it is super important to get it right, because otherwise the tiniest mistake in your smart contract can get your project to burn in the flames, and you don't want that. Have it audited again if you have the time, if you have the chance. That is important. Once you've reached that point, get listed on different directories, generate some buzz about your project. We blogged, we post on social media. If you can, go to as many events that you can, spread the news about your project, tell people in person, get them excited about it. And that leads me to the very last step of the project. Well, not the very last, but the last of this presentation, the actual ICO day. At the beginning of the day, you're going to be like that. You're going to be overwhelmed, excited. It's an emotional roller coaster. You might be thinking, oh my God, is there still a chance to get out of this? No, there isn't. And as soon as the contributions start coming in, you're going to be like that. And you'll be like, whew, done, we did it. We did it. No, you didn't. The actual work is just beginning, because you still have to build your product. But it's a very exciting time in the development of your project, and you have the funding to do that. So there you have it. Make it rain. I don't know if we have any time for questions. I believe not. But I'll try and stick around after the event. So if you have any questions for me, go ahead, find me. I'll be glad to chat. Or you can always email me at Vanina at AdEx.netowrk. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Okay, so pretty quickly this time. Usually our meetings last for a bit longer than we all want, but this time I can see that we are a bit more prepared, and the presentations are actually limited to 15, maybe 20 minutes, so we'll have enough time for discussions afterwards. The next person who will be talking is Asen. He has worked for Google and Activision, and is currently trying to generate funding for his idea, or his cryptocurrency blockchain idea. But he's not that big of a fan of an ICOs. He has some ideas about ICOs or a way that ICOs can be done in a better, taking into consideration more factors, and he will present that vision to you, and also he'll start with a short history of ICOs, what was raised, how it was raised, and so on. Looking forward to his presentation, actually. Almost ready? Where did you connect it? Something happened. Това не ти трябва. Така, това е окей. Само там трябва да се появи. Okay, there we go. Give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I don't have that experience as the previous speaker. However, I'm planning to jump into this crazy world of cryptocurrencies. I've been following the space since 2013, and I've seen a lot of irresponsible practices in the space, often not on purpose. And I decided that this is a good place to talk about how to make things more responsible, how to fund your project more responsibly, how to really provide the safety net for the investors or potential backers. So, let's talk about it. First, about me. So, who am I? I actually started programming when I was 9 years old. Just started hacking around, doing things, got interested in computer science, algorithms, all that. Did computer science contests, worked for video games, Google. None of this is related to blockchain. However, after all that, I decided, you know what, why not? I'm just going to take a break. I'm just going to do a sabbatical, so to speak. And I saw that there is a huge opportunity for innovation in this space. So this is not just about money. As you're seeing right now, there's so many things that are being redefined. We have no idea what the world is going to look like in 10 years, but I do believe that cryptocurrencies and blockchain is going to change the world. So I want to be part of this, and I'm mostly interested in the innovation part of it. And that's it. So yeah, I caught the crypto bug. I basically mostly focused right now on solving scalability. I believe that there's a lot that can be done in this space. I'm interested in distributed computing, machine learning. I think all of these things will eventually converge, and we will see all of these cryptocurrencies or blockchain technologies one day interact with one another. I'm also setting up accelerators and incubators here in Argentina and United States. This is early stage. I'm still researching, but that's the next step. So enough about me. If you thought this was boring, watch this slide. So I just want to say this is in no way legal, tax, or financial advice. You guys are responsible for your own actions. Because I'm not an expert, this is just my opinion on how I think things could be done better. So hopefully we're done with the boring slides. So today we're going to look at a brief history of the ICOs. I know this is not exactly the topic, but I want you to see how things progressed over time, to see where we are and where we started. And also to make some analogies with the dot-com bubble. And of course, I will show you how to evaluate ICOs, at least some things I'm doing when I'm evaluating ICOs. Are they good? Are they bad? Are there good practices in general? I think the space is going to change a lot. And we want to propose some things that people could do more responsibly for ICOs. And of course, what I'm actually planning on doing is an alternative to ICO, because I personally am against ICOs, and I'll explain why later. Now, so how many people here want to do an ICO? Okay. How many people here are interested in investing in ICOs or want to know how to evaluate them? Okay. Okay, so this is like a half and half, so I'm glad. I think we will try to satisfy both halves. So, okay, so history. The first ICO, I'm actually not quite certain, but I believe it might have been Mastercoin, which is not listed here. But I'll just start in 2014. Obviously, Ethereum was the biggest one, and at that time, it was considered, wow, this is an insane amount of money being gathered for something that's just an idea that everybody thought was crazy. Are you crazy? You're going to run programs in a Turing-complete setting on a blockchain? And yeah, that number was considered pretty high. I'm not going to mention the other ones. We don't have much time, but yes, so that was huge. And then we entered the bear market, and in 2015 we didn't have that many. I probably missed some, but overall it's a lot less in 2015 because the market went down. And then in 2016, when Ethereum launched, Slockit published the DAO. The DAO was this decentralized autonomous organization where you could put all of your money, not money, but Ether in, and then you had control how it would invest and what it would invest in. And this was a great idea, and as you can see, it raised $150 million, and that was a lot compared to anything so far. This was a historical event in 2016. Unfortunately, the DAO also had a bug, which split the network into Ethereum Classic and Ethereum with the hack to return the money. But the point is that that was a good idea, and obviously the market believed in that. And then we also saw that even just the second one, Waves, raised more money than Ethereum, and it, in my mind, wasn't anything much different or much bigger than Ethereum. So, and then what happened in 2017 is just madness, right? So we have just the top Tezos raised 200 million. EOS is still running and could be the first $1 billion crowd fund. That's insane. Like, they just have a white paper right now and they're already $200 million in. And this is not cumulative. This is from the beginning of the year up until now. Anyways, Eternity also made that list. Anyways, there were a lot of ICOs in 2017. And what made that possible, of course, is Ethereum. As you all know, Ethereum established the standard with the ERC20 tokens. So it's literally writing a few lines of code to get the smart contract going. And a lot of the hassle around building a network from scratch has been taken away as a risk. Of course, that doesn't mean that you still don't have to have a new concept, a new idea, solve an actual problem to do the ICO. Anyways, so do you guys agree that there's a lot of hype right now going on? I think so. It's not entirely unfounded. I do believe that this technology is going to change the world. However, I also do believe that people are just blindly investing in ICO. Not everybody, but there's a lot of people who are just throwing money at it because they know that the upside potential is so huge that they don't care about the downside. So I want to introduce to you the brutally honest ICO, the useless Ethereum token, which is the fairest of them all because it says you're going to give some random person on the internet money and they're going to take it and go buy stuff with it and that's it. No guarantees. But, you know, this guy collected $65,000. So what does that tell you? I mean, which is 54 televisions. In his unit measurement of success is how many TVs can I buy. So this shows that there is a lot of, in my mind, there is a lot of, I wouldn't call it dumb money, but at this point it's just entertainment to throw things at smart contracts. Just throw money at it. So yeah, I think this happens mostly because if we look at the total market cap of all cryptocurrencies, we see that early adopters are probably sitting pretty right now. And there's a lot of people with a lot of money who have no experience in investing whatsoever. All they know is that they've seen a lot of good returns. And they kind of got that feeling that this is going to keep happening, you know. And so, again, I want to point out the dumb money and the FOMO that they create. FOMO, by the way, stands for fear of missing out. We've seen a lot of the ICOs get funded in less than 30 minutes, some even in less than 10 minutes. So you have, by the time you figure out if you should invest in it, it's already over. So you have that peer pressure. I think this will change and should change. So again, going to the next subject, the dot-com bubble. So what do we know about the dot-com bubble? I mean, I don't know how many of you were actually following the market during the dot-com bubble. But so let's look at it. 900 IPOs, all of which were Yeah, between 97 and 2000, in 3-4 years, so over 50% of them are gone. But in what, 5 years? So what you have is 85% failure. We are talking about companies that are going through a heavy, rigorous regulatory process. You can't just publish, you can't just become an IPO. There's a huge process that has to go, you have to go through. So my point is that what I'm seeing in the ICO world, people who invest are a lot less conservative, and we will probably see a much higher failure rate. That's just my view. Of course, I could be wrong, but I think there's a lot less good practices in the ICO world, which will lead to a lot more failures. That said, if we look at the NASDAQ, and if we look at, say, Amazon, if we were to invest in all the top companies, which is basically the NASDAQ index, we would see that you got a return of 380%, while the Amazon took 60,000%, which is insane, right? So what happens here is that, yes, the technology will change the world, but you have no idea who will change that world. Like you won't really make that much money. So you need to be careful and constantly watch. In my mind, we will see something similar happen in the crypto space. We still don't know if Ethereum is going to take over the world, or if it's going to be Eternity, or Tezos, or EOS, or whoever. So we are in early days of all this technology. Time will tell. So how do we evaluate ICOs? So I think it's very similar to your regular businesses, right? So look at the potential. So what problem are they solving? What is the value proposition for that? Who is the target market? Is it big? Is it large? What is it the size of that market? What's the timing? These are things you would do with normal company, right? You wouldn't just invest in a company without knowing what they do, who is their clients or potential clients. Of course, the competitive advantage is important. You need to know who is the competition, and as well as what is your differentiation. Are you solving the problem differently? So even if it's a crowded space, sometimes if you're solving it in a slightly different way, you might capture a niche. So that's a good way to diversify. So all these things are important. Also the stage. In my mind, prototype speaks louder than white paper. Of course, most projects say, well, we need the money to make the thing, so here's the white paper, give us the money and we'll see. In my mind, you should still focus on creating the value first as much as you can, and then look for the money. But I guess I'm long-term greedy. And then, of course, the team is important. Who is the team? What is their expertise level? What is their track record of doing things? So anyways, the last part is actually what I really want to talk about. What is the safety net? Because in an IPO, in a regular company on the stock market, you can, you have some safety net, right? You're protected. There's a lot of regulation. We hate regulation, but it's also something that we rely on. So right now, most ICOs say, look, this is what we're doing. We're going to take the money and we'll see what happens. But, there's no guarantees. And often, ICOs can't give you a guarantee because they actually legally cannot do that. If they do give you a guarantee, legally that could get them in hot water. So that's why they don't. Look at EOS, for example. In the contract, it says, you will get nothing in return, just like the TV guy. That's, of course, not their intention, but I think they do it for legal purposes. So, with that said, I think we need to see some good practices not only get established. I would imagine that companies will show up that do analysis of the ICOs, that look at specific factors. Are they providing money-back guarantee, for example? What do I mean by that? And actually, I'll just jump into this. So basically, refund options, buyback programs, perhaps the token that you're collecting, let's say you're doing it in Ethereum, why should you as a developer actually own that token? Shouldn't the smart contract own it and then be released as things get developed and finished, as things get completed. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're doing an ICO, you probably have so many things to think about, so many risks to run into. You probably don't want to add on top of it, let's make sure we don't get our money. So we have a conflict of interest here. Developers really are not interested in making sure investors are protected. So I propose that there's some milestone performance-based release of funds, hopefully through a smart contract. There's a good project, Colony. They're still early stage, but they are doing project management within a smart contract, which is very interesting. It would allow people to basically perform tasks, and the funds only get released when they do. And of course, the testing part is very important. Give bounties for peer reviews and bug finding, and obviously you don't want to be the DAO. Have this great idea and then get hacked. And there's no way to guarantee that you won't have a tiny bug in your smart contract, but it's better to try and catch all these. So ICO is just one of the distribution methods. Prior to ICOs, there were a lot of other, I mean, Bitcoin itself never did an ICO, it's just mining, right? You mine the token, it comes out. So people started doing all these other things. There's Burst, which did proof of capacity. Basically, they were using hard drives instead of mining. So you're using your hard drive to prove that you have capacity. And because you can't scale hard drives as much as you can scale Bitcoin mining, it was actually a lot better. It had a lot better, basically, equal distribution. The distribution was a lot more fairly done in my mind. Then there was these guys who did just a capture, people solving captures, so obviously helping the third world doing captures, and then they get paid for that, which is weird, but hey, they did it. I like the folding coin because they're, you know, helping fight cancer. However, they didn't do so well financially. Gridcoin is using the already established distributed computing network in Boeing. And then there's, you know, all of these other methods. I mean, I don't want to go too deep, but proof of citizenship was also interesting. As you know, in Iceland, they have, their passports have a digital signature, so you can prove that you're a citizen of Iceland. So they just dropped on every person who is an Iceland citizen could just get some of the supply. Anyways, it didn't take over, but it was an interesting concept. Counterparty did a very interesting one. I don't know how many people are familiar with that, but they did a proof of burn. You're sending your Bitcoin to an address that cannot be spent. So you're basically burning them. And in return, whoever sent that would get some counterparty. And I think this goes for all of them, that, you know, so far, okay, we've done these distribution methods, but how do we get funded? How do we get funded if we're not doing an ICO? And I want to point out two projects I really like how they did it. So Dash is one of them, even though they did have some pre-mine. I don't like the pre-mine, but they did that. So their network requires master nodes to be running. 45% goes to the miners, 45% goes to the master nodes, and then 10% goes to a treasury. So it's owned by nobody and everybody. So it's a decentralized treasury where you can do proposals and it's released monthly. So let's say you want to organize a marketing campaign or implement a new app that's using Dash. People will vote on whether this is actually going to help or not the whole network. And then Zcash did something similar, except for the first 4 years, percentage of all the mined coins go to them. Now, some people will say mining is wasteful. I do agree with that to a degree, but I also think it's a trade-off. Do you want to be, like, I think projects that are based on some mining are far more responsible because there's no investors. You're not getting money up front. You actually have to be in it for the long haul. And here I'll just compare. So basically, most of the ICOs, they just get the money. Investors assume all of the risk, almost all of the risk, or all. Very few ICOs actually give investors any guarantees. It's hard to pivot because you presented what you're going to do, and as soon as you start changing, they will come with the pitchforks after you. And I think the incentives in general are misaligned. While if you do it in a more responsible way, you could, yes, it will require longer-term commitment. It might not be easy to find people to join your project, which is what I'm probably be facing. And then you're assuming all the risk. Developers are assuming all of the risk, which I'm personally okay with that. But obviously, you can't scale to 100 people team when developers are assuming the risk. However, it has this organic growth, which can go on for a much longer period in my mind. And of course, you can pivot, and I think the interests are aligned a lot better. So that's just how I see it. Obviously, we can argue on that. So this is what we're doing on my project, one of my projects. So we're actually going to do a mineable token. But this mineable token is not as wasteful as most normal mining projects that you see, because here you will be mining the right to be part of the validator network. So once you mine it, there is no waste. Once you mine the proof to be signing and transactions and be a validator of the network, that's it. You could run it on your phone. And so I think this is a very interesting concept. I call it proof of authority. Then a percentage of that will go similar to how it's done in Dash. It will go in a treasury. But that treasury, it's important to note, we as the core team are not going to own that. Anybody can submit proposals. That means that if there's people who are smart or entrepreneurial, have some vision, and they can execute, they can join the project at any point, and they can say, okay, we want to get paid for making your network better. Okay, come and join. We will gladly sponsor you. Not we, but the network. And then all these proposals get voted mostly by the validators who are interested in having more and more projects on this platform, because that's what will generate fees. And the core team has no direct control of the funds. So most projects that you see today are in the position where you're hoping that there will be these benevolent dictators. They will not do anything bad with the money. They will not do anything bad at all, and they will deliver on all their promises. But that doesn't always happen. Even if they have the best intention, they might not be the right team, but maybe this is still the right idea. Perhaps other people can step in and take over the project instead of doing all these forks that we're seeing right now. So the way I view it is that the treasury allows you to kind of do proof of human work. You're doing proof of work in exchange for performing tasks, because this comes from the network itself. This doesn't come from any party, entity. It's just the network rewards certain things that are done. So these links, I will post this presentation in the group. Obviously, you guys are not going to remember all of them, but you probably know most of them. The Smith & Crown, which I think you also mentioned, is interesting because they do analysis on ICOs. They do, I think, a pretty good analysis. Cyberfund Radar is interesting because they also release a lot of the upcoming ICOs and analyze them. CoinDesk, just a news site, and then there's a Reddit that also talks about a lot of crypto. Anyway, so that's it from me, and we can do questions, comments. Feel free to contact me. These are my contacts. I'll post in the group as well. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. So we are done with the presentations for today. Lyuben asked to say a few words, so I'll give him the chance, and then we can have a little chat here with questions and answers.
Thanks. My name is Lyuben, and I'm one of the partners at LaunchHub, the investment fund. What you might not know is that we are actively investing in crypto since 2014. We are the first investors in economy, actually Kishiwa, which is the team that has developed the economy project. So we are happy token owners in economy. One thing, me personally, I'm a crypto enthusiast since the beginning of 2014 when I was about to invest that close in Vladi's first company by the time. Besides that, I still believe ICOs are gonna do something good for the funding. However, there are big question marks, and you just mentioned some of them. How we, as a fund, consider this to happen is that there's a place for the traditional VCs, or at least the VCs that have some kind of vision in the crypto, to help the teams develop their projects, launch the prototype, and then go well prepared for the ICO and raise accordingly. Because, as said, this Wild West is not gonna last forever. Security and Exchange Commissions that just put a big question mark. So whoever wants to is planning an ICO or any project in the crypto, you're more than welcome to come and talk to us. We are easy to find. Launch Hub Ventures. We are 5 partners, and you can provide our addresses and so on and so forth. So welcome and talk to us. Thanks.
All right, so I guess you have a lot of questions, or at least some questions. Come join me, speakers. And this was supposed to be like a panel, but I think it would be better for you if we organize it as a Q&A session, since I saw that some of you are want to be investors or have already invested. Others have interest in organizing ICOs. So if you have any questions, please shoot, and let me give you a microphone. So who is the first? Okay. And you just pass around that microphone to the next person, please.
Hi. Okay. Yes. I have a question to Vanina. It was easy for you to find initial investment before the ICO, or it was very hard? And how did you find your first investment, I mean before the ICO? Because the ICO process, I'm sure that it's connected with a lot of expenses, and how to cover all this.
Well, I wouldn't say it was easy. It's never easy to get people to give you money, right? Otherwise, I would be on a beach with a cocktail in my hand right now instead of being here and, working. I know, I told my team we should get the money and run, but no. We actually stand for, we're actually excited about building the prototype and building our product. I know, silly us. The thing is, no, it was not easy, but it wasn't rocket science either. We had very good partners, and the thing is, a great deal of the AdEx team comes from a different project called Streamio, that is a video entertainment hub. And on one hand, we had already been working together, so we had the team in place. On the other hand, we already had people that knew us from Streamio, and they were willing to invest in us because they knew the team. They knew our potential, they knew who we were and what we could do. So in that case, yeah, it wasn't, I would say it was, somewhere in the middle ground. The other thing is, at the beginning, you don't really have any funding, but a lot of partners that you find along the way are willing to work for tokens. So this is something that you should keep in mind. You promise people a certain amount of tokens based on the success of the ICO, and this way they are more motivated to do their best and give the best help that they can. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much.
Hi, about jurisdictions, you said Estonia?
Yes.
And I read a guy got sued about a Bitcoin exchange. So can you elaborate why Estonia exactly, apart from e-citizenship? Thanks.
Well, the e-citizenship was a great deal about our decision. I'm not going to lie to you. This was very major when we took that decision. The other thing is Estonia is in the European Union, you know, and they haven't really done a Brexit yet. I hope they won't. So that was also a positive sign. And other than that, you know, at that point, the news about the guy being sued over Bitcoin had not surfaced yet. So we weren't really aware of that. But as I said, Estonia has a very token-friendly legislation. The chances of them jumping against all ICOs and saying, hey, that's a security, that's a derivative, we're going to tax you, we're going to, you know, make you jump through hoops in order to get your funding, the chance of that is very slim.
Okay, and in detail, did you compare to Switzerland, Gibraltar, and actually only these two because you said EU is important. So did you compare to Switzerland and Gibraltar?
We did, but neither Switzerland nor Gibraltar, well, Gibraltar technically is still in the EU, but it might get out of it with the Brexit. That's still a big question mark. And also in Gibraltar, things are still a little bit questionable. Right now, they don't have any legislation regarding distributed ledgers. They're working on that. They have the best intentions of doing that. But how effective that will be, we don't really know at this point. And then Switzerland, yeah, I don't really know why we didn't go with Switzerland, but yeah, I'm going to give the microphone to my colleague Ivo, our CEO. He's going to give you a little bit more details on that.
So I'm sorry, I was supposed to be on the panel, but I think Vanina is a better decision. So I will explain this. So Switzerland was really slow at the time, and speed was important for us because we didn't have a lot of time to prepare the ICO itself. We did prepare the project for 1 year behind that, but we didn't have that much time for the ICO. And Estonia, things happen quickly there. And another really important thing, and you should also consider Malta, by the way, is that Estonia is a small country and Malta is also a small country. So the regulators are easy to reach. And this is also really important. If you want to do an ICO, talk to the regulators. So I guess it's as simple as that. And of course you have the tax reasons, but that's something totally different.
Is it an asset or a security?
So in our case, it's more like an asset. Yeah, but the important thing is it's a utility token. So it has a purpose within the product, but it doesn't allow you dividends, voting power, and all that things. And also something really important. Sorry? Oh yeah, so you can look at it both ways, but maybe after the talk. Okay, so another thing really important for regulators is that you have the product working, because if you claim that your token is an utility token, you have to have a working product using it. Otherwise, it just looks like a tradable thing, which in the US can be considered a security only because it's tradable. So yeah, but that's a really long topic.
I think it's my turn. My question is, why do you think that you should only consider an ICO if your business is blockchain-based? Because I can think of a few examples which worked quite well for non-blockchain-based businesses.
Because the big beauty of what is happening right now is that you can leverage the distributed ledger, and you can leverage the Turing complete Ethereum to actually build part of your business on the blockchain. And that's the important thing. Otherwise, I think it would be more beneficial for you if you seek VC capital, because VC funding is going to provide amazing feedback for you. And ICOs are not going to do that. ICOs are going to tell you you're a scam and you have to fight that and you have to build trust with the community, but they're not going to provide you good feedback for your business. And VCs are going to do that and are going to help you to build your actual business.
Okay, thanks. That was a good answer.
I'm sorry, I have another question. It's maybe a bit lamer, but why do you have to find such a legislation? What is the difference between, for example, Bulgaria and Estonia? What is the reason you go abroad?
Well, the thing is that we work with specific people in the field who are legal advisors, and they are legal advisors in the blockchain field, right? So they have done their homework about specific legislations, and it will be more time consuming to make them research, for example, Bulgaria, rather than using something that they already know.
But maybe Bulgaria is appropriate, we don't know. It does seem to have advantages.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, a few months ago, maybe more than half a year ago, I asked a similar question to the local finance authority. They provided me with a reply that in the case that you're creating tokens which could be considered currency in some way, this could be a problem, and this could lead to the decision on their part that you are creating private money, which is forbidden by law here in Bulgaria, and you can actually become a criminal. So it's not clear if that is what is going to happen, but these are the rules, and in Bulgaria it's just not it's not allowed to create money. If you do that, you always have to. I mean, you need to, like, maybe the most important thing is that you need a legal advisor who can who has worked in the sphere, who has advised other companies, and who can provide you with the most updated information about what you can or cannot do during an ICO. And it's the same case in Bulgaria. I think one of the reasons why Bulgaria is not considered, apart from creating private money, is the fact that the administration is super slow. And when they hear about tokens and then digital currency or something, I mean, they'll just, it's a blank look, and they'll just write something or give the questions to one of the interns to maybe provide an option, a reply. So just be very vigilant if you're doing this. The legal side of this is super important, and actually the founders, although a lot of people believe that there is not that much risk for the team, I mean, you're getting the money and then you can do whatever you want. I mean, all the people who are involved in an ICO could be in some way in the future legally liable for what they have done. So this is a huge pressure that they need to live with. So this is a very important factor that people outside are not maybe considering that much. Question there.
Why do you okay, so you did the thing in Estonia. Why do you feel secure in Estonia if the example for the US SEC thing means that the legislation might be based on the country where the person residing that is investing in the currency or in the ICO is located?
Okay, one thing that I want to get clear before we continue talking about the SEC in the United States have not implemented any legislation as of this point. All they have done is they have published an investigative report. Whether that report is going to turn into a piece of legislation, we're yet to see.
Did they already punish an ICO or organizers of an ICO?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you all.
I thought somebody was already somewhat convicted for doing an ICO in the US. Or not an ICO in the US, but for people from the US that invested in the ICO. I don't know the exact details.
So actually what happened is they said that the DAO, which was the project from last year, is definitely a security. And the thing is that the DAO is actually built to be a security. There's no working around that. When they wrote the code, they actually wanted to make it a security over a smart contract. So it's undeniable and unquestionable that it is a security, but they didn't press any charges yet to the DAO. And the reason it got investigated so much is because of a hack. 50 million got stolen, Ethereum forked, everyone knows. So the thing is, they haven't put any charges, but the thing is, we all have to be careful from the Security Exchange Commission, and we all have to be mindful of that. We have to design our tokens in a way that they are not a security, and in our case, what we did, we didn't accept investors from the US at all, because that makes us instantly have to comply with the US laws.
No, I understand that part, but why do you
even
say,
okay, even despite that, our token is still designed not to be a security, just to be extra safe, and that's the right way to do it.
What I meant with it is, how do you protect, for example, from a situation where you have investors in Bulgaria where there is no legislation, that maybe in 6 months they say, oh, this ICO, it's a bit suspicious, let's
well, that's why you have to design your token in a way that even in the future, if there is a legislation, it would be okay.
But that would mean you could safely do it in the US as well, which you already said that you prefer not to do. Because of
that's why you need to comply beforehand. That's what I'm saying. You have to assume the worst and prepare for it.
Sorry again. How do you are sure that the investors in your project are not from the United States?
We can't be sure, but we ask them whether they're from the US when they participate. And so this is a level of legal protection. It's not bulletproof, but it is a level of legal protection.
Okay, thank you.
Where do you learn more about which country has legislation in place not to ask investors to invest, kind of like what you just mentioned in the US? You got to have that checkbox that you're not from the US when you're investing. So how do you know any other countries are not protected from that?
So you have to do your legal homework. You have to have a legal advisor. And one of the first things that you have to do when you plan an ICO is to get a legal advisor. And then that legal advisor is going to connect you to different lawyers who are going to do different tasks for you. And that means that they are going to do their due diligence and tell you not do that, not do that, and etc.
Thanks.
Hi. My question was regarding your company in Estonia. I assume that you're going to hire developers in Bulgaria. So is it legal for the same people who own the company in Estonia to pay a Bulgarian company for development? And would you recommend a specific legal advisor?
Well, of course it's legal. It's an Estonian company, and if the Estonian directors, meaning us, decide that the company should spend the money in a certain way, then if the activity is legal and software development is legal, then there's no issue.
Yeah, because you are evading essentially all taxes in Estonia.
Yeah, but it's not. It's when you pay a Bulgarian company, you still have to pay tax.
Yeah, you do.
So.
And could you recommend your legal advisor, even if it's Estonia or something? I might be traveling there soon.
Well, I would recommend him, and he's not Estonian, he's Israeli, but he's very busy with all kinds of projects, so.
Thanks.
And again, on the part of legality, it's apart from having a very good legal advisor, it's good to be in direct contact with the regulators directly in the country in which you are doing the ICO. I think this is something that it's good to do before you start doing the ICO, just to have a meeting with them to discuss what you're doing, what you're planning to do. And they can advise you on what, I mean, if this is acceptable or not. So, although the general opinion is that there is no, I mean, you can skip all these little legal hoops that original IPOs have to go through, it's not entirely the case, and you need to definitely speak to regulators or spend some money on advisors before you engage in doing an ICO. Because you might get it wrong, and if you get it wrong, you could be in a whole world of trouble. So have this in mind, definitely.
I just want to point out that a lot of these problems go away if you're not doing an ICO. I'm not saying that you have no problems. In our team, we're actually talking to legal experts to figure out what we're doing, whether that might be considered token, and are we protected. So you still have these issues, but I feel a lot more comfortable if I'm developing without taking the money up front. And I think a lot of the problems go away with that. I'm in a position where I can afford it. Now, maybe not many people can do that, but something to consider, that you could still create a token that's not necessarily sold for the money, but you create value and then it becomes valuable. Just like Bitcoin, for example, or it, you know.
There were, in relation to the SEC decision, there was some person from Reddit, I think, or some prominent blogger. He extracted the 3 questions that you need to answer positively in order for your token to be considered a security. And let me try to find these questions. I actually posted them in the group, the Meetup group, but maybe we can have a discussion on that.
Yeah, it's called the Holton test, I believe.
So I think it's called the Howey test or something like Howey. I don't know what the questions are exactly off the top of my head, but I did see just before I got into this meetup a lawyer who is preparing the file, or at least is involved in the Filecoin ICO, that they're doing it completely legally. He's a lawyer in New York, and he posted a very long analysis on what just happened with the SEC. And he said basically, passing the Howey test, that would mean that you are basically considered a security. Not passing it doesn't mean you're not, so keep that in mind. Another thing he mentioned is that just because you are in Switzerland, Estonia, or Mars, doesn't mean that the United States government doesn't reach out to you and say, hey, we don't like what you're doing. So keep that in mind as well. A lot of these things will take time to crystallize as soon as the governments release proper answers to these questions, but I think it's still a legal minefield in my mind.
Yeah, no, the ugly truth is there's always a chance that you end up in jail. And you know, if you end up in jail, better be in a country with good jail system. Yeah.
Well, definitely you need to keep some of the ICO money for legal advice, just in case. And these are the three questions. And if you manage to, as far as I understand, if you manage to get one of those, to claim that you have not fulfilled one of those, you could be on a safe ground, so to say. And what I see a lot is usually when people are doing an ICO, they are heavily stressing on the second point. And this is actually, I think, the only point that it really depends on you to a large extent, and you should be very careful in your marketing not to set expectations of a profit in the future. Because this will directly, I mean, you will answer this question yes, and the first and the third are very hard to argue against, I would say. So keep those in mind. And still, I mean, even it's always a matter of interpretation. So no matter like what your answers are to those questions, it's still going to be a legal battle if you start. I mean, if you are considered in some way that you have done a token which is considered a security, or you have investors from the US who have invested in your ICO, so the SEC could have some, to keep you responsible for the fact that you haven't received the license before doing that. Questions? Any other more questions? Well, if not, I mean, I hope this was interesting for you. Maybe a final applause for all the speakers. And just a few final things. I mentioned in the beginning that the sphere is super dynamic, so I'm thinking of starting each meetup with like the most interesting 3 things that happened in the previous month, with short commentaries and maybe questions. So if any one of you is interested in doing something like that, I mean, just get in touch with me and we can talk. Also, this presentation or this event was for the first time actually video recorded professionally by edit.bg, and they'll be continuing to supporting us. So all of the meetups will be available online, and I mean, they will reach more people. So.